Welcome back. With New York becoming the 16th state to legalize recreational marijuana, the move is expected to generate over $4 billion while creating tens of thousands of jobs. Here to speak with us about the impact this could have on small businesses in the Bronx are Michael Brady, CEO of the Third Avenue BID, and Peter Madonia, Belmont BID chairman. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. So first, let's get right into it. What are each of your thoughts on the legalization of marijuana in this city?
Okay, I'll go first. And I just want to preface anything. I was at the first smoke-in, and it was, I think, Earth Day today in 1970 or 71. So everything I say is without value judgment, and except my own personal ones. Look, I think this is a train that's been coming for a while, and I'm not surprised it's happened. I hope it was thought through completely. I'm a little worried that it hasn't been thought through completely, which isn't uncommon in government and legislation. But I'm not shocked and surprised it's here. How it manifests itself over time is worth watching.
Michael?
Yeah, I would agree with Peter. I think, this has been something that's been in the hopper for quite a while. And I think, advocates like the Drug Policy Alliance, pioneers in drug policy like Joyce Rivera at St. Anne's Court of Harm Reduction have certainly helped push this. But I also think the threat of a fiscal crisis as resulting from COVID-19 also pushed the legislature to act faster than maybe some folks would be more comfortable with. And I think that, to Peter's point, I think, it's going to come down to getting into the weeds to make sure that, it's implemented appropriately. And that's often a difficult thing to do in government. I think legislators have a lot of great ideas, but when it comes to the implementation process, that's where it really matters. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon the Office of Cannabis Management to really make sure they do it the right way.
Now, with small businesses taking a major hit during the pandemic, could this be a way for businesses to make extra revenue? What are your thoughts?
I think it definitely could be, but it gets down to those details. As it is right now, there are some hurdles that would prevent that from happening when it comes to zoning, the 500-foot rule. Not all landlords could actually take a dispensary tenant, particularly if they had a federal loan, like a PPP loan, or if they had a federally backed mortgage. So I think, it's going to come down to getting into the details. And I think to fully realize what New York State wants to do, federal legislation is going to have to be, introduced. But I think that there could definitely be some benefits to struggling mom and pops. But, this is not a great panacea. It's going to take years for this thing to come online. And there are going to be a lot of hurdles and challenges in doing that.
Yeah, I would echo that. And if anybody thinks this is going to, change the unemployment rate dramatically, I don't. It might help some landlords who, the government has helped kill the restaurant industry pretty effectively. So maybe those spaces will get filled by some of this. But it's not. I don't think it's a game changer in terms of unemployment, and particularly in our borough. But I think across the board, I also there's a big, there's a smoking ban in this state. I don't know how this, I haven't seen anything that helps me understand the implications of this is smoke. I don't know whether it's cigarette smoke or marijuana smoke matters in the smoking ban. How does it implicate in terms of places that want to be lounges / restaurants / bars? I think that's the devil's in the details of this stuff. And I've been on the other side of it. I did work for government and an operational capacity. The legislation passes a bill. The rest of the government has to make it happen. And this one's pretty unclear at the moment. If I were sitting in a regulatory agency, I would be scratching my head right now saying, okay, how are we going to enforce this? What do we enforce? Are we enforcing?
So Peter did mention the unemployment rate and he gave his thoughts on that. That was actually my next question. Michael, if you wanted to chime in, just based on your experience working with businesses in the Bronx community, could the introduction of the multi-billion-dollar industry make a dent in the unemployment rate in the city? What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to come. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We're talking about building a completely new industry in New York City. And with that comes a workforce retooling programs that need to take place. And, New York State does not have the strongest track record in rolling out those types of programs. So we rely a lot on consulting agencies or nonprofit organizations. I think, in the long term, if we do it right, it could impact unemployment, but I don't see it happening probably for the next 3 to 5 years. And that I'm being hopeful with that, just because the Bronx's the Bronx's employee base is mostly healthcare and hospitality workers, and as the law is currently written, hospitality businesses are not able to sell the cannabis because you can't sell cannabis with food and drink. So then that to Peter's point, I think that gets back to the regulatory agencies. How are they going to sort this out? And I think everyone needs to get on the same page. And, it's great that our legislators are going for sound bites, and this is certainly something that I think would be beneficial to New York State in the long run. But we just have to make sure we're not setting people up for failure, and people have a realistic understanding of what the timeline is in New York State to roll out a program that's effective.
What are some of those other possible setbacks the legalization of marijuana creates for businesses, especially here in the Bronx, if you can share?
I think there are some landlord issues. I think some landlords are going to look at this and say, "Oh, well, this is great. This could be a cash cow for me." But if they've taken a federal Paycheck Protection Program loan, an EIDL loan, an SBA loan, anything that was backed by the federal government, they're not allowed to take that tenant on. Similarly, with federally backed mortgage, I think there's some zoning matters that need to be hashed out. If you're going to get a liquor license, there's the 500-foot rule. Similarly, I'm sure there's going to be something with the cannabis rulings in terms of proximity to schools or churches, things of that sort. And then there's also like the operational things, and that's like really getting into the weeds. Is there a certification process? What are the equity requirements? What are the health requirements? All of those other things that haven't been hashed out. And I know last week we celebrated 420, which is a big day for everybody. But it's great that people are excited, but we just need to temper the excitement a little bit, because we need to focus on implementation and be smart about it.
Yeah, I mean, and just to get further into the weeds, and excuse the pun, so I live in a building and I have 3 kids, and I'm not particularly, my own value system says this, I don't think this is a great idea. And it's a pretty strong smell last I checked, and it's wafting through my hallways and my doors, and I'm not happy about it as a tenant. I think there's going to be a lot of that gets played out, and I guess it falls back on the landlord or the police, or I don't know who. But if I'm the smoker, it's legal. I'm in my apartment. Leave me alone. I mean, I just think it's going to create a bunch of, and this will take time to sort itself out. But I think that's a real life scenario that in a city of 8 million could play itself out quite often, and not pleasantly.
Absolutely.
Like, those are the things that, when you pass a bill, nobody's gone down to that level of detail, and I think the implications are quite significant.
Right. It's almost not, well, it's almost always when the scenario occurs or when that happens that things start to get, questioned, and more questions start to come up with the implementation of a new legislation. So thanks for also bringing that up. So I know we kind of talked about this already, but just to, bring it up, over the next few years, the legalization of marijuana is expected to generate over $350 million in tax revenue for the state once fully implemented. Are there any ways that businesses that you work with could incorporate the distribution of marijuana to help them gain additional revenue?
I think it's going to be difficult. I think businesses have to be comfortable with it. There has to be that level of comfortability, and the state has to be very exact in terms of the regulations. You don't want to get hit over the head for something that the state hasn't thought out yet. So I think, could revenue be generated by like bodega sales for marijuana? Absolutely. I mean, bodegas up until recently were selling K2. But I think it's going to come down to what the regulatory environment is and the comfortability that business owners would have with it. I think that there's a real market gap for entrepreneurs here. and with entrepreneurship, I think there comes an inherent risk. But I just think that with more established business owners, it's going to be a tougher sell because the regulatory environment is so uncertain right now.
I think you're exactly right, and I think it's partly the regulatory environment is unclear and very unsettled, and will get played out and adjusted. So you don't want to be in the middle of it being adjusted after you've made an investment in something without articulating what something is. And then I think there's going to be a personal comfort level with, yeah, I can make hash brownies at the bakery. Do I want to? Am I okay with that personally? Is that how I want to grow my business? I think all that's going to play itself out, both in the individual decision making and then against how complicated this is going to be to put into play, because none of it was articulated, or I don't even think thought through, quite frankly, prior to legislation being drafted, and that always makes it a much harder.
A lot of questions that the businesses have. I'm sure the bids are here to help and assist in any of those upcoming questions. But before we go, what is some advice you have for businesses looking to try and make a comeback during the pandemic? They're still struggling throughout the pandemic here in the Bronx.
I would say have some hope. And I know that's a difficult thing to swallow because we're up against it in such a big way, but have some hope and figure out how to get re-excited about your business. I think a lot of people were very downtrodden because of COVID-19, and we need that shot in the arm to get people excited again, and excited about opening up their storefronts and employing people. And in terms of the cannabis legislation, my advice would be wait and see. We'll take a look at the regulatory environment, and we're also going to take a look at the street sale environment, and what that impacts for quality of life. Right now we have street sale, which, I'd say maybe 30% of what they're selling is marijuana. If that's going to be sold out of a local bodega, they're either going to lose their market share, which I don't think they want to do, or they're going to upgrade their drugs.
Yeah, that's a big worry for me. And I look at, I take as an example, off-track betting. So the notion was to take betting, illegal gambling, and make it legal. And as far as I know, it's the only business that failed when they had a guaranteed 5% income on every transaction, and it was a failed business. It did, and it also didn't stop illegal gambling. I'm pretty sure. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to take a wild guess. So I don't know. I think that is also something that is unspoken. We've obviously, the both of us are comfortable speaking about it because I think it's real and we live on the ground. So that, like, how that manifests itself, I think you're right. If it actually works, what's the street sales going to turn into? And is it worse?